Sounds like what we think about the movie. Film crickets, chirping about movie crickets, chirping about, chirping about, chirping about, chirping, chirping, chirping about film crickets, chirping about movies.
It's time for the Film Crickets with Jay Fortier and Chris Martineau. On this week's episode number 37, Jay, Chris, and their special guest, award-winning journalist, movie critic, and editor of HollywoodInToto.com, Christian Toto. Jay, Chris, and Christian review the 1993 American fantasy action comedy film Last Action Hero. Does it stand the test of time?
Toto, that's not polite. We haven't been asked yet.
Let's find out. Your Film Crickets are on now.
Couldn't help yourself.
All right. Well,
You just couldn't help yourself.
well, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jay Fortier, and I'm along with my good friend
Chris Martineau over here.
And we are welcoming this week. We have a brand new guest that we have not had before. It's from HollywoodInToto.com. It's Christian Toto. Christian, how you doing, bud?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. What's going on? You know what? We are the Film Crickets, but we have our first film critic on today. So, we're honored.
I feel like I'm in the big leagues now. I don't know.
Well, you know, in the internet age, everyone is a film critic, and that's a great thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really been fun to have different voices being amplified. It isn't just the stuffy film critics, and I actually think that change has really made traditional film critics a little bit more populist in a way. I feel like, back in the day, horror movies would get shunned unless they were, the big directors were behind them. I think today's film critic is a little bit more fun, a little bit easier to please, a little bit more willing to kind of go with genre movies and superhero movies. I think there's been a kind of a nice transition there.
Nice.
Cool. The Eberts and Siskel and Ebert were always notorious like anti-horror movie, regardless of what the subtext was. It's like, it's just a bunch of blood and gore and teenagers getting massacred. And I'm like, maybe it's a little more than that. I don't know. Maybe not. Who knows?
So, all right, Chris, you want to run down the IMDb version of what this movie's all about? Then we'll get rolling.
Absolutely. All right, so let's get into it. This is Last Action Hero, coming out in 1993. We are directed by the inimitable John McTiernan, and writers Zach Penn, Shane Black, I believe, is involved in this movie. Not that you can tell. It's obviously Shane Black. But with the help of a magic ticket, a young movie fan is transported into the fictional world of his favorite action movie character, starring, of course, in multiple roles, Arnold Schwarzenegger. And only Arnold Schwarzenegger can have the chutzpah to play Arnold Schwarzenegger. But we have Arnold Schwarzenegger, F. Murray Abraham, which blows me away. Art Carney's in this, Charles Dance, France McRae, and then we have Anthony Quinn's in this movie. Mercedes Ruehl is in this movie. Sir Ian McKellen is in this movie. Everyone is in this movie, and I'll get into more of the cameos and whatnot later. But man, I was stunned at the people that are in this movie. Now I'm gonna start. I'm gonna ask an opening question, okay? And I think I like this. This is a first good question. Who actually saw this when it came out in the theater? Anybody here?
Me.
Oh yeah.
Not I. I did not see. I don't know why. It's not like it was a snooty thing. Like, I just didn't. I didn't get to go see it. I think part of it is that I heard it. Now, this movie, in my opinion, has some harsh criticisms as being a giant failure. Right? I mean, that's kind of the vibe on this film. Like, it was a failure. It had a lot of press. It had a lot of. I mean, wasn't there a Burger King tie-in for this movie?
I think there's always a Burger King tie-in, right?
Valid point. That's a valid point. No, I think there was some kind of Happy Meal Burger King like tie-in for this movie. There was like Subway sandwiches, like it was being plastered all over the place as it was going to be this summer blockbuster. And then I think after the first weekend, it dumped like 57%, and then no one went to go see it after that. And it's marketed as a failure. And I want to get to that after. I think I didn't see this movie because I listened to what the critics said, right? I was big on Siskel and Ebert at the time, and they said, "Oh my God, this is a waste of time. It's such a mess. It's not what anybody was expecting." So I didn't see it. So when you guys saw it, did you like, "Oh, this is going to be an awesome action movie"? Like, I want to get some context here, Christian. What did you just go just because Arnold or what?
You know, back at the time, I was watching every movie I could, every action movie for sure, and I was steeped in Arnold because he was the biggest star around at the time. My memories of the movie are twofold. One, I didn't enjoy it as much as I liked his other films, Predator and things like that. But also, this was like a little bit. Remember, Kevin Costner was one of the biggest stars around, and he just couldn't do anything wrong, and he was celebrated and he was adored. And then he made Waterworld, and everything kind of came crashing down on him, and he really took a while to kind of recover from that moment. I felt this was similar to what Arnold was going through. He was the biggest star in the world. Everybody loved him. This was the moment where I think sometimes in American culture, we like to build you up, and then we like to kind of kick you when you fall down. And this was Arnold's fall down moment. And when you watch it again, you could sense he was almost too big for his own britches in a way. And I was reading a little bit of the backstory. A lot of what happened behind the scenes was, we can't anger Arnold. We have to appease Arnold. We can't make him. You can't chase him off the project. I think in a way this was just maybe an ego run amok in a sense, or maybe power run amok. And I think that's kind of the cultural history that I can see from this.
All right, cool. So
I saw it in the drive-in, and now it might have been like a double date situation where you're kind of giggling and laughing about stuff. So not a lot of attention maybe was going towards the film,
really.
You know, so no, but I remember going, that movie's kind of weird, like you know, like and I guess you could sort of see what's happening on the screen, and then you're like, it's not what you were expecting from, and I think that happened with a lot of people, that they were going in with a little bit of history behind Arnold, and then all of a sudden going, it's not really what I was. I did not expect what I'm seeing here, and then walked away saying this bites. But then a little later, like for instance, I saw it probably like 5-10 years ago, and I ended up really enjoying it. So I already knew I was going to like it today, or yesterday, and it's one of those, like, sometimes you have to revisit, and then you can. A lot of times when you're not ready for something, it sucks,
right? And
then all of a sudden, like if you go see it again. I kind of had that feeling about Scream. The first time I saw it, I wasn't really into it because I was laughing, and I was like, I'm watching a horror movie right now and I'm giggling. You know, you know what I mean? Like I wasn't ready for such a thing. So same thing here. People weren't expecting this type of film, and I think that's I think sometimes if you go revisit it, you can be pleasantly surprised.
I love revisiting movies, especially from the 80s and 90s when I was kind of formulating my opinion on movies and really kind of enjoying them in a way. But when you're a teen, there's a lot of sort of visceral reaction to stuff. But now when you get a little older, you appreciate it differently. Now we can see it again and say, why did we feel that way, or how does it translate today? And Jay, you're right. This movie, I liked it less than you, but this movie was truly ahead of its time. And I think if it came out today, it would be much better accepted based on some of the themes that are going on. And you mentioned Scream. There's a great connection between the two films. They were mocking the cliches. It was sort of a meta-analysis. And that wasn't as common then as it is now. It's almost too common now. So I think at the time, people were like, wait a minute, I kind of maybe see where they're going, but this is uncomfortable in a way. And I think it's a bit of a mess for sure, but I do think it was ambitious in a way that maybe people didn't expect.
Go ahead, Jay.
Prior to that, the Purple Rose of Cairo did a similar thing. You guys both familiar with that?
Oh yeah.
Where Jeff Daniels comes off the screen and enters the human world, and because Mia Farrow is watching the movie like every day, obsessed with it, and he finally turns to her and says, "God, you must really like this movie," and then comes into her world. So it had already been done a little bit, just in not quite the same manner. Right. And no kids probably saw Purple Rose of Cairo.
No. I'm going to say no. I did. But,
for the most part, no children saw it.
Right.
Like, and this is a kid's movie, really. Like you could tell, I would say so, for the most part. Fantasy, childlike,
I
Magic Ticket.
I agree, and I kind of don't, and I think this is part of the reason. Well, of course, no, but I mean, because this movie is, and like I think we're kind of getting at it. And I know where I'm going to go on my final judgment on this is that nobody was doing meta back in the day. Like no one was doing meta in 1993. Like no one was peeling back the curtain of movie making or breaking the fourth wall and now it's all over the place. I mean, you got a couple of Deadpool movies. You've got a bunch of like this is happening all the time and people love it. I mean, look at The Office. The Office is all this, even though it's fictional. It's all this stuff like, hey, what's going on behind the scenes? And people dig that, right? So, but at the time when you're coming off of, and this is a Christian's point, you're coming off of Predator, Commando. When was Kindergarten Cop? Is this before or after?
It's right around here. It might have been a smidge before.
I think it's a little before.
It's close.
And
might be like 91 or so.
Right. So you're expecting, and they're marketing the hell out of this thing, maybe because they don't think they have a strong movie, and so they're plastering it everywhere. Like we've got to get everybody in the seats for this weekend, and then it's going to fall short. But like this, they're not ready for this kind of meta stuff. Like you're marketing The Last Action Hero, and the movie is really about how movies are ridiculous. You know what I mean? Like that's my blockbuster is about how movies are basically all a sham and kind of bullshit. and I love it when they're going into the. So just a quick synopsis here. We have a child here whose life is garbage through no fault of his own. His dad dies. It's just he and his mom. His mom's going to work all the time. He's alone all the time. And his only escape is the movies, right? So he goes, and he lives in, by the way, whoever did like the tourism council for LA in Repo Man is the same person as the tourism council for New York City for this movie. The dumpiest place everybody, all crimes. I have murdered someone, and no one shows up. So I mean, so this kid is magically transported into a movie for reasons, and it doesn't matter, right? But then when he was transported into the movies, and this is where I'm gonna, Jay, I agree and disagree, and Christian, I'd like to hear what you think about this, is that we go into the movie, or we see the movie in a movie, the Jack Slater movies, and all the Foley sounds are out of control. All of the acting is way above board. I mean, that police commissioner, he yells so much you can't even understand what he's saying. And they make fun of that. Ears, yeah, I know. It's that's basically it. The explosions, all the explosions are out of control. And we already, like, Michael Bay does out of control explosions, but this movie does explosions and obviously sends a car flying through the air, like exaggerated. And like that to me is, that's not a kid joke. Like to me, that's an adult joke, right? So you have this kid, and that's why, Chris, you're saying this movie's kind of a mess because what is it? Is it a kid's fantasy movie, or is it all the jokes for adults? So I want to know what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's too many cooks in the kitchen, and I think that's what this is a real great example of, where it's a kid's movie. You've got a kid's protagonist. A lot of the jokes are silly and maybe flatulence related at times, and then you have this more sophisticated story that's really aimed at discerning moviegoers who get the kind of the tropes and cliches. And you know, it's funny, a lot of the Pixar movies do this well, though, where they've got sort of the slapstick for the kids and then more sophisticated material for the adults. But it doesn't coalesce to me here. But it's a good point. It's like, who's the audience here? Can we keep this on track? And I think it often kind of goes off the rails.
Oh, sure, it's a mess. It's a hot mess.
But by
Jay,
the way,
what do you think?
well, I do want to say I did take a quick glance, and Kindergarten Cop was in 1990, and this was 93, so three years prior, if that makes
So interesting to note. Let's talk about now, Christian. I'm sure that Arnold Schwarzenegger is an egomaniac. There's no doubt about that, and also John
And that's okay.
Whatever. Well, I'm not. Hey, he's got a cooler job than me. What do you? I mean, come on.
Right.
And John McTiernan is obviously. I mean, he's so full of himself. He makes fun of his own movie 3 times in this movie, right? But what I found interesting is that Arnold Schwarzenegger is not a great actor, but he has progressed from Commando, and in Kindergarten Cop he gives a pretty good performance, and he actually dials it back to Suckville for this movie. Like he's, you know what I mean? Like he's dialing back, like, and how I think McTiernan is saying, look, in this movie, Schwarzenegger's a crappy actor. So you have to dial back your skills a little bit and go back to Commando. How hard? That's got to be hard. I'm sorry. What do you?
I think you're being kind to his performance. I understand what you're saying, and I think over the years he has gotten better. Yeah, I've seen him in recent movies. He's pretty solid. Even in the Dark Fate movie, I thought he was the best part of it in ways. I think I wanted the Jack Slater character to be more over the top in a way, and yet I think he doesn't go there. And I also think that it's one of his more flat performances. The whole thing about Schwarzenegger was, well, he can't act, but he's got something. He's got screen presence. He's got charisma. I didn't see that side of him here as much as I usually do. So I think, listen, it's very possible he was trying to go kind of dial back the clock on his earlier, less emotive performances. And I think you're being generous, and you could be right. But I just as a moviegoer watching it again with fresh eyes, I just didn't enjoy the performance. And I rarely find that about Arnold. I think he's very engaging. And, we swallow some of the accent stuff and some of the, he's just not an incredibly expressive actor. But he always has something. And I just think... I think it's a sign of the movie's mixed signals that I just didn't think his character popped really.
Good soundtrack, though. I own that soundtrack way before
Holy
I
crap,
even saw it. A lot of good stuff on there. AC/DC, Big Gun. They have Tesla on there. They have Megadeth. You heard Megadeth on there?
Yep.
I mean, they had a lot of good, even at the end, Def Leppard, Queensryche, loaded. Oh, Aerosmith.
Can't forget Buckethead.
Oh, Bucket.
Can't forget Buckethead. Don't forget Buckethead.
Aerosmith with the live symphonic version of Dream On.
Oh well.
Yeah. Hey.
I always wonder about Arnold, and I think I see what you're saying, Christian. But I'm gonna say this: John McTiernan knows what he's getting out of his actors. So then the question becomes: is Arnold just saying this is the best I got, or is Tiernan saying? Like, the point I always give is Hayden Christensen, right? We hate Hayden Christensen in the second and the third movie, right? Because he's whiny, he's a little bitch, and he's terrible, right? And his acting is suspect. But I've seen him in other movies where he's okay, like in My Life as a House, and I can't think of...
Shattered Glass, too?
Yeah, that one, too, right? And he's not as bad as he in this, and nor is Natalie Portman, by the way, but boy, is she terrible in these movies. So I'm wondering, I always ask myself, and I don't know this, but again, the director's in control, right? And he knows what he's getting out of his actors, and I'm wondering if he says, like, for Hayden Christensen, George Lucas, we need you to kind of suck, because we need you to be a character who's obviously flawed, and obviously has an issue, and obviously isn't an adult. And for Schwarzenegger, like, we need a guy who is flat. We need a guy who is doing this. And I just wonder. It's just part of the discussion. So maybe I am giving him more credit, Christian, honestly. But it's
Well, I think one important point about Schwarzenegger, which I've always appreciated over the years, is that, he became famous. And what he did was he almost always aligned himself with very talented people. He ran to James Cameron, McTiernan, Ivan Reitman. When he wanted to be funny, he went to the king of comedy at the time and did Kindergarten Cop, and later with the... what was the pregnant one where he was a man? Junior.
Oh my God!
So, but the less said, the better. But I think I think when you're an actor, you have this moment of fame, you've got this moment of power, where you can pick the best. You can work with the Spielbergs, or you can pick hacks, and your career goes south. I think Michael Keaton did that, where he was so famous, and he started picking these bad projects with less than great directors, and I think he really kind of went away from as a pop culture. But I always admire the fact that Schwarzenegger really knew that he had to find the best directors and work with them, and I think it's what he did here, but it just didn't work out.
Sure. Jay, how do you feel about the runtime? Christian, no, don't hold back. How do you feel about the runtime on this?
What was it?
2 hours and 10 minutes.
Wow.
It did feel every moment of it. It really did.
Well, it was funny. I was keeping busy and watching it at the same time. Like, if you know what I'm saying. Like, I was watching it, but I also was making sure other things were getting done too. And but I was still keeping with it. So like it didn't. And yesterday I had off from work, so like it wasn't as crammed. If I had watched it maybe at 10 p.m. I would be having a totally different opinion right now. I think sometimes that really matters, like what setting you're in.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if
You're right. It's sad to say, but that will affect how you. I mean, if you're busy, if you've had a bad day, if there's some sort of weight pressing on you, work is sort of maybe overwhelming you. You can't help but be impacted by that.
Yeah. So like it didn't bother me, but I also was. I also was making sure other things were were being done at the same time, like got to send this file out or whatever, But I was still, it's not like it's difficult to follow.
No,
you know what I mean?
No,
you know what I mean? It's like, oh, this major concept. It's not like The Matrix where you really got to go and learn, all about this brand new thing. It's like, well, okay, so he's now humans in the movie world, movies in the human world, murder, mayhem. Got it.
Got it. Check.
Pretty much, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah.
So
it was good. But go ahead.
Go ahead. So is the movie too long? I mean, the movie's too long. And why does it feel? Because we've watched other movies, and Christian, you have too, where it doesn't feel the 2 hours and 10 minutes that it is. So why does it feel every moment of 2 hours and 10 minutes?
When I go see an Avengers movie, I want it to be 8 hours long because that's just like I just love it. And if it's firing on all cylinders, I'm in. Keep it going. I don't care. I feel that about a lot of sort of genre movies and things. I'm having a great time. This one, I think the point of it is kind of breezy. It's meta. It's trying to kind of riff on all the cliches in these movies. It doesn't need to be well over 2 hours long. It just doesn't. You get the point. And I think if there was, and there's so much you could erase here that wouldn't mean anything. From a zillion cameos to some of the subplots, you got to chop this down to like 145 tops. Get in, tell the jokes, you get it. Arnold's kind of being self-referential, and you're out. It does not need to be this long. It's just the plot doesn't hold it together. The story, you don't care enough about the characters, and if that's all failing, just make it breezier and quicker.
See, and I'm going to sound like I'm not coming in as a negative Nelly. I didn't have a bad time with this film. It just seemed like too long, and I think the way I was thinking about it when I was watching this movie was like you always hear, and I don't know if I get the number right, but you'll hear critics say this movie has a third act problem. You know what I mean? Like they don't know where to go at the end at the third act, right?
Yeah.
And some movies can fix that problem. Like Ghostbusters, they didn't even know how they're going to finish Ghostbusters with the day they were filming the end. They're like, how you want to finish this movie? This movie not only doesn't have a third act problem, it has no acts. Like I'm serious. Like I'm watching this movie, right? And I'm watching this movie, and again, it's gonna sound like I liked it less than I did, but I'm like, okay, I'm watching a movie about a kid, and now I have to watch another movie in a movie, almost the whole movie in a movie, and then once that's over, I have to watch another movie, and each, you know what I mean? And they're out now. I've got a whole new set of problems, and I'm like, what is going on? Like this is far too much. And it's almost like there is no third act. Like there are no acts. It's just I'm watching a movie, now I have to watch it. And by the end of the second movie I watched, I don't want to watch another movie. And I think the problem is, much as I loved all the meta jokes, and I can go on and on about all the cool meta jokes that were in this that are really for the adults, they do, like you keep going back to it. Like it's the same thing. You keep hitting that target over and over again, rather than what you're saying, Christian, trying something different. They just keep hitting the meta jokes, which are fun, but after a while it's like, okay, can we like do something? Which is why I really liked it when the guy came out of the movie. To me, the most clever part was, and I mentioned it before, is like, oh my God, the bad guys can win out here. And he goes, I have murdered that person. He comes out and shoots somebody just to see what's happening. He's looking at his watch. There's no cops. And he yells, I've murdered that one. And as much as I knew the line was coming, because it was New York City, when the guy yells down and goes, shut up down there, I knew it was coming, and I still laughed. So, I mean, that was cool, but that to me was the most, besides the whole vibe of the whole movie, that plot twist was the most clever thing, and it's at the end. And so you had to wait for that, which again, it's a long wait. So I don't know. That's why I think, like you said, should be an hour and 45. But
I think some of them getting to, like for instance, was it Charles Dance? Is that who it is? Right?
Yes.
He, like him shuffling along before the guy gets shot and stuff like that. Like, do we really need to watch him shuffle along down the street? before the guy gets shot. You know what I mean? Can't he be there? A guy gets shot and he walks over. Like, I think some of those things could have been tightened up for the time frame that you're talking about. Like, meaning just some of that stuff. Like, oh, look, he got into a cab. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's a little action there, but it's not like it's all that necessary. Tighten it up. That part, you know what I mean? And I think you can still, hour and a half. This movie should have been an hour and a half. Absolutely. I agree. But like I said, it didn't bother me because of the stuff, my environment. But, you know, but I can see it absolutely shouldn't be like that for this type of film. Because it's not like it's well known. Like, it's not like it's already something, like, for instance, Christian, you mentioned Avengers. They were already got stuff that people are already excited about already. You know, so of course people are going to be there for a long time if they want. You know what I mean? Because they know what they're getting at this point. Of course, if it's like Zack Snyder's,
Oh God,
4-star, part 1, part 9.
Isn't that? It's kind of self-flagellation at that point, right? When you're making a 4.5-hour movie, isn't that a lot? Or what?
That's
what
a lot.
I honestly like. I've heard people say like they should just let Zack Snyder do what he wants. Well, go all in. It's either going to be an hour and a half or it's 9 hours, 3 parts, 27 hours total. Just let him do whatever. You know what I mean? Because that's what people. I don't know.
And then you
didn't you think?
And then you avoid the 2 years of release the Snyder Cut on Twitter. So that's I could skip that. So
yeah,
Right.
isn't it bad? Let's not change the topic totally. But
No,
isn't it bad to give in to toxic fandom? Like, isn't that a bad move? Aren't you setting a bad precedent? I'm not sure where I stand on this. What do you think? Like, should they have done that?
I think it's a case by case thing. I get what you're saying.
Okay.
I think I like the fact. I think sometimes Hollywood can be too dismissive of its own audience, and I feel like with the Snyder Cut, it was like saying, "Hey, people genuinely want to see this. They won't shut up." And this poor guy did start the film, did have a personal loss, does have a lot of stuff in the can. So I think in that case, it did make sense, and I enjoyed the Snyder Cut. No movie deserves to be 3.5 to 4 hours long. Granted, there's no argument to be made about that,
Right,
and there's
yeah,
stuff to be trimmed. But I thought it was better than the Joss Whedon version, and I think it was a genuine kind of pop culture curiosity about what might have been. So, I guess you could also say that Hollywood is always kind of bowing to toxic fandom. They do press screenings. They change things at times. I mean, I think the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, they had to change the special effects because they were lousy the first time. And I think it made it better. So it's case by case to me. But I get it. You don't want to get too beholden to the fan. You do want the artist to kind of have his or her vision and say, hey, this is what I got. Love it or hate it. And, we can go from there. But then maybe even it's better to have multiple versions floating around. There's an Aliens director's cut. There's Blade Runner director's cut. Maybe that's the best way where you can have the original, but also have a plan B, and you can kind of satisfy both crowds.
But back to Last Action Hero, I really I got a kick out of a lot of the jokes though, like with the kid trying there's no way everybody could have 555 as their number. How many people live in LA? Stuff like, or where's the ugly people?
I love that was a great my favorite part of the movie was that line. That was so funny.
Yeah. I know. I was a big fan of Say This Word.
That was good too.
Oh yes.
That was I like that. I thought that was pretty clever.
Excellent.
He holds a little sign up. No, you can't because this movie's PG-13.
Nah, I don't need to say it. It doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I don't have to. Yeah, I like that part. It is, like I said, it does have a lot of good like he bags on his own lines. Like that's the other thing too. Like Schwarzenegger, as much as they're making fun of movies, and think about this: you have a blockbuster where they're saying blockbusters are nonsense. Really, I mean that's really what it's saying. They're saying that like they market his movies that you shouldn't pay attention to blockbusters because they're all goofy garbage and you shouldn't listen to it. But I mean, the fact that he kind of makes fun of his own taglines, you know what I mean? Or that we see the LA Reservoir or LA Aqueduct again. This is like the 4th movie Jay and I have done where the LA Aqueduct is in it. I love how the cars would go up into the air and then like in the middle, like change their direction and go the other way magically. Like, but it's to me, I like that sort of thing because to me it's ballsy for a writer to say, hey, let's make fun of the thing that we're going to try to make millions of dollars for. But again, the execution is poor, and the fans are like, what is this that I'm watching? Which is why, again, nobody wanted to go see it after.
Yeah.
But
It's funny that
there's a cartoon cat. Sorry.
voice, that was Danny DeVito, I think, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, it
another
was.
in joke. In a way, the timing was good on this and bad because it was good because we just got out of the '80s where all these movies were sort of over the top, and it was ripe to be just like dissected. And yet at the same time, it came out around the same time Jurassic Park hit theaters, and people weren't ready for meta-analysis, so it was sort of the best and the worst of the release schedule. But I think the worst, and ended up winning the day. And it's always fun to say, well, if it had a different release schedule or this, but it's not a great movie. He's done better movies. So yeah, I think it kind of mostly deserved its fate. But again, I think we're all appreciating the fact that it was thematically ahead of its time.
And they also made fun of the, they brought in the rivalry between him and Sylvester Stallone, and they put Sylvester Stallone on the cover of T2.
Yeah,
which was great. That was really funny.
Is he saying like in the when we, by the way, this movie's bananas. In case we haven't really talked about the fact that this movie is absolutely bananas. There's a cartoon cat in it that plays a detective in like a film noir trench coat that's voiced by Danny DeVito. That's nuts. The main emphasis on the third movie in the movie when the characters come out of the screen into the real world, and basically the bad guy says, I can call in any evil character I want from the movies and invade the planet, kind of thing, which was kind of neat. But we're missing the fact that Bananas' idea of this, that in the movie, the bad guy, Christian Slater, say, what's going to happen? I walked out of the movie. No, Jack Slater, who is the character, Schwarzenegger character in the movie, comes out of the movie to chase the bad guy that came out of the movie. And the bad guy's plan is to kill the actual Arnold Schwarzenegger. We have not brought that up at all. So at some point we have like this is like bad movie Inception. We have Schwarzenegger acting in a movie as Schwarzenegger, and then we have Schwarzenegger acting in a movie playing Jack Slater, and at some point the two of them meet and tackle each other. Like, that is bananas. Try to explain that. So again, this is my argument. Is this a children's movie? Just like Phantom Menace isn't a children's movie because they talk about trade embargoes and taxation. Like, who gives a shit about that? So try to explain what's happening, like, to a kid that isn't the protagonist in the movie, and you're trying to see an action movie. Like, Mommy, why is Schwarzenegger fighting Schwarzenegger, and why is one Schwarzenegger like cool and badass, and the other one's worried about plugging Planet Hollywood with Little Richard and Chevy Chase? Like, that's bananas as an idea.
I think I had mentioned that it was a child's movie only based on the fact that, like, the magical ticket and the guy dressing up. So, like, that's. I think what I'm saying is that in that. It set it up as one. That's really where I was going. I didn't say it was all out children's. But
I'm not saying that. But certainly the ticket goers are going to be. It's a summer movie. Kids are out of theaters. Mom and dad want to bring their. That's where they're getting their money from.
Yeah.
And so, what movie are we watching? Again, the movie's a mess. But go ahead, Christian. Sorry.
Oh, no, earlier drafts of this project had the kid as a teenager, like a legit teenager, not like a preteen. So that was definitely a conscious decision to make him younger to kind of reach that demographic, I think, in part. So it would have been a different film with an older kid. And also those earlier drafts, I didn't read them obviously, but I read about them. They kind of sounded more grounded, and it really did focus on him losing his dad and how he used movies as an escape, and that he kind of the end of the movie where he realized, real life does matter more. I need to kind of deal with my loss. It kind of sounded like a beautiful arc that gets lost in the shuffle here, obviously. But is there any movie, modern or otherwise, that has more cameos than this one? I mean, we didn't even mention Tina Turner or
Sharon Stone.
Sharon Stone or the actor from Terminator 2. His name is escaping me. The bad guy, the bad cop.
Oh, I didn't see him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he came out.
I think Sharon Stone is coming one way, and maybe he's in the other way. Was it Robert Patrick?
I think Sharon Stone
Robert
was
Patrick.
actually just like lighting up a cigarette outside the video store or something like that, or it was something like that. Sort of leaning up against the wall. It was kind of very, very quick. So
The only person in what makes it makes it seem so long is that the only person with a character arc is the kid. To your point, like he realizes that the real world, even though it sucks, is real and everything else is fictional. And that's the problem. I think what makes the movie seem so long is that the other main character, Jack Slater, has zero character arc. And he doesn't have... That's not the point. I mean, the point is not for him to suddenly realize whatever. But, I mean, he has a little bit of a something at the end where he says, go home, go to the real world, that sort of thing. But really, the guy that we want to focus on, Arnold Schwarzenegger, has zero character arc. And that's boring to watch.
Yeah,
That's boring to watch.
it's by necessity based on the plot of the movie.
Right.
But I agree. It is, and I just didn't think he had much personality. He was a little bit arrogant. There was nothing about that character that was exciting to me. The Jack Slater character. I mean, he was competent. He was good what he did. He took pride in being a cop. That was kind of nice. But it didn't have that sort of snap to it. So, but I just learned about this, kind of preparing for this podcast, is that there was a book, I think Kim Masters co-wrote it or wrote it, and it talked about, I think Sony, but it was really one of the major themes was this movie where it all went wrong. And it was really fascinating to read. I read kind of a synopsis of it about all the different changes, writers coming in, writers coming out, William Goldman coming in and doing a spit polish on it. You know, I think that can happen, and you can get a big blockbuster film that's really good. It's kind of the magic of Hollywood. They could do this path, and it's a disaster, or they can do all the different chefs, and it works. It's amazing. And somehow it comes together.
Right.
So that kind of staggers me away.
Wasn't that the Rogue One problem? Didn't they have to do redo Rogue One? Am I thinking of that right, or was it Solo?
It might have been both. It was certainly Solo. I feel like Rogue One might have had some tweaking, but I loved Rogue One.
Oh, so did I. No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's a success.
Yeah.
In that it was kind of...
Do you remember the pre-Titanic buzz? This is a disaster. It's over budget. This is just going to be it'll be a bigger disaster than the actual Titanic. And then it comes out and everyone loves it and it becomes the biggest movie of all time for the era. So that is fun as a movie fan to kind of see things happen like that, and because you really never know.
Yeah, it's strange how when there's a lot of cooks like that, it really starts to, it can, for the most part, hurt. I mean,
I just watched
Joss Whedon. Sorry, Joss Whedon gets blamed for the Joss Whedon cut, but it's really he was just brought in to sort of go beep beep beep. Okay, this already been done here, but I'm gonna put a stamp here. All right, I'll raise some jokes over here. But it's kind of I wouldn't full on blame him. I blame the people that brought him in. You know what I mean?
And also I think Warner Brothers was saying this movie has to be exactly 2 hours. They can't be any more or any less. It has to be exactly 2. And so you have this huge arc of Zack Snyder, and Whedon comes in right. I got to dump all this stuff. I got to reshoot this, and that movie is also a hot mess. By the way, the Whedon Justice League is a hot mess as far as I'm concerned, but that's just me. Sorry.
I just caught up with a movie that I loved as a teenager, and I loved it again. It was Sweet Liberty, and this is off topic in a way, but Alan Alda writing and directing, great cast, really good comedy bits, but it's one voice, and often that could be kind of sweet in a way, or at least there's a flow to it. And even though Sweet Liberty is not the greatest movie of all time, it does feel like there's one voice behind it. It's got a story to tell. It works, and I think sometimes with these, 16 different screenwriters hacking away at a project, it doesn't have that sort of uniformity to it.
It hurts.
Yeah, and you can definitely tell that on this movie because, again, it's 3 movies. There's 3 movies in this movie, and it's very hard to do. And maybe, it's a studio film, right? So the studio says do this, and then you do it.
Yeah.
But, wow, there's no director's cut of this. There's no it's not like John Carpenter's The Thing. This is not like John McTiernan's Last Action Hero. He doesn't have final cut. He has no control, basically, I guess. I don't know. But I don't know. That's kind of that was kind of my take on that part.
So there probably is not going to be any special edition Blu-rays with all the different pieces.
Oh, I'd love to hear that.
No, they probably
so he has
won't
the pods where yeah, I know, but I'd love to see it. this is a path where they told me to act like this, and I said no, I won't act. I won't act like that, and so I'm going to talk Planet Hollywood no matter what. So I wonder when they said don't talk about Planet Hollywood, and then Schwarzenegger talks about Planet Hollywood. I wonder if that was like the director saying, Arnold, we can't talk about Planet Hollywood. Well, I'm going to anyway, so work it in. So they worked it in to kind of make fun of him.
It was also kind of funny to watch
knows?
Maria Shriver like sitting there go, okay, that's enough, and then she pulls him. It's kind of embarrassing.
No.
Like, look what she says. She like complains about how long he's been talking. Yeah, that was pretty great.
That's good stuff. So
by the way, Schwarzenegger did True Lies shortly after this, but his career was never as white hot again. I mean, he did some other films. Obviously, he stepped away to become a governor. But I feel like his career was really just up the stratosphere. And this happened. It really kind of knocked him down a peg or two. And, was it Sixth Way or Six Something he did? Eraser, a third Terminator. I mean, he never kind of quite reached the heights of his early career. It's kind of, I don't know, it seemed like a turning point of sorts in a way.
Yeah, I wonder if some of those...
I thought of
some
that.
of those ones you mentioned, like Eraser and the Sixth Way or whatever. Yeah, I can't think of it either. The Sixth Sense.
Sixth Sense.
Yeah.
I see German. I see Austrian people. Right, what?
I see my maid.
I think sometimes.
I see.
I think some of those. Sometimes, like action stars tend to pick these films that like become sort of like meh. You're like, you know what I mean? Like, you get the big ones, like True Lies. But then if you choose something else that's like those, it sort of becomes part of the background, like, that you'll look back at and never remember. Like, we can't even come up with the title.
Like Liam Neeson's last 7 movies.
Right.
Aren't they all the same movie, kind of?
Or like,
Yeah, I love him too. He's
but if
great.
you put, if you take, the Seagal and Van Damme, like those, they started to come out with movies. I thought they were going to run out of titles. With like, Hard to Kill.
Oh.
Bad to the Bone. Like, of course that wasn't one of them, but you know what I mean? Like Hard Target. You're like, it was like after a while, it's like, aren't you going to run out of these little cliches?
By the way, go look at Steven Seagal's last maybe 8 movies. The titles are, it's like they didn't even try. It's so bad. I haven't watched these movies. I'm assuming they're awful. He's older now. He can't really move like he once did. But even I just like scroll through Netflix or Hulu, and that's a title of a movie? Oh, yep, there's Steven Seagal. So
Man,
I guess they
who once knew
they phoned in
Aikido.
every aspect of it.
Yeah. He's a chunky boy now. He's a
Well,
big fella.
there was one
It's
cover
okay.
that he had like the goatee and everything, like, and he kind of looked like Danny McBride. I thought it was Danny McBride. I was, it's Steven Seagal. Sorry, Danny.
I smell a buddy movie.
Twins 2.
In the Twins too, yeah. Steven Seagal gives birth to
Wow.
Jean-Claude Van Damme.
By the way, is there a worse idea than a third Twins with a Schwarzenegger and DeVito?
I heard
think Eddie
that.
Murphy was like a mention
I
with
heard
that.
that. Yes, they were going to do it again.
It just
with
sounds
Eddie
so-
Murphy. Yeah,
Sounds
like,
so-
and it was within
now?
the last like 10 years.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Please
that's
don't.
crazy
Bubbling up.
pants.
Yeah.
That's
If you're going to
crazy
listen to the
pants.
fans, please don't.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Worst idea ever.
So
Sorry.
what do you think? I think we've kind of touched on a lot of this. You want to go to final judgment on this?
I think we can do that.
Here
I
we
think
go.
that would work.
It's time now for final judgment. Are you ready to rubber stamp this bitch? Here's the final
All right,
judgment.
It's time for final judgment, and what do you say? I'll go first, I guess. And see where
Okay.
because I think all right, for myself, it's fine. Like I liked it. I liked it a lot better than I liked it when I was late teens. I think. I don't think I'd sit there and think that this would hold up for a lot of people. I'm listening to it and I'm watching it and I'm like, yeah, it's fun. I liked it for what it was. I appreciated the thing, the stuff that I appreciated. Of course, there was a lot of stuff that wasn't working, but I wouldn't sit there and think a modern audience would come in and go, wow, that was just awesome, so much fun, loved how they picked on the old stuff, with Arnold or whatever, like how he picked at himself. I just think I think it fell flat back in the day, and it probably would as well for an audience today. So I don't think it holds up. So quite simple.
Okay.
There, I got it.
Chris, you want to go? Or shall I?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll take a stab at
Go
it.
for it.
I think it's more ambitious than I remembered. I think it's ahead of its time, but I think it's as much of a hot mess then as it is now. And I think today it's more of a kind of a curiosity of a sort of for film fans to dissect, kind of pick apart the good stuff, acknowledge the bigger picture. But as sort of a breezy escapism, I think there's other stuff that's much better. Certainly from Arnold's back catalog. I've rewatched Predator recently. Boy, that holds up just to perfection. That's a very good movie. And yes, it's got a lot of the 80s exaggerations in it, but that one is just a rock and roll, and this one is not.
All right. So I'm going to go in and say I was expecting this movie to be just terrible. I was expecting it to be, because I remember the press on it back in the day. I thought it was going to be about as silly as like Hard Target, or not Hard Target, but any Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, basically. Like, it was just going to be like stupid and awful. And now that I watched it, I realized why it bombed. Is because of that meta-analysis. It's just what doesn't happening back in the day. The movie is obviously, it is a kind of a hot mess. It meanders around, doesn't really know what it's doing. It does keep hitting the same joke over and over again, even though those jokes are clever at times. There's no doubt about that. I would say, I will differ a little bit. I think that, I don't think this would work well in the movies. I think if it's on cable and like, I don't know where do you market it? Is it Comedy Central? Is it Sci-Fi? Is it, where the hell do you put this movie? I don't know. But I think people now, because of the advent of all this meta, breaking fourth wall, behind the scenes, like making fun of the things that we like I'm a big fan of that. I make fun of Star Wars all the time. I love Star Wars. The Jaws, I love Jaws. I make fun of it all the time. I think that is more now than it was then. So I think it actually, the time for this movie is now, not then. So I think it not only, it holds up, I think it actually kind of met its vintage now, but it's a short window of vintage, and it's not going to get it for long, because then something else will come and no one will like this meta stuff anymore. But yes, so I'd say it doesn't hold up. It actually has met its time now, but it's still a hot mess. And it's entertaining. It's not like, I didn't despise it. It's fine. You know what I mean? It didn't insult my intelligence, I don't think. It's just that that's my take. It doesn't hold up. It got better with time, but it's still kind of a crappy movie. So,
Which is basically like
I
this
guess
film.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Put that in the poster.
It kind of holds up. Still a crappy movie. Last Action Hero. So that's cool.
Like,
all right.
It's sort of like just like this film. It's all over the place. You were just all over the place
Yeah, it
right
is.
there. With that. Yeah.
Yep, it's true. Yeah, I typically am when I do
but
this show.
this was
But whatever.
it calls for that. Like.
I think so. Yes.
That's your meta commentary
Yes,
about
it's
this
true.
movie.
I'm breaking the fifth wall, as a matter of fact. So it's a new thing. It's a
And
new
the sixth.
thing. Get used to it. All right. So anyway, Jay,
So.
want to sign us out?
So if you'd like to reach us, well, first off, Christian, why don't we have you plug anything you like to plug, or how people can reach you or whatever.
I'll be appearing in Vegas doing a show tune. No. My website is hollywoodintoto.com, and I review as many movies as I can, and actually have a guest critic who weighs in on older movies, kind of like exactly what we're doing here. And he gives a lot of kind of great context about what was happening then, how it's seen now. So that's a lot of fun. So check it out.
Nice.
Cool. Thank you very much.
and if you-
and it was very nice having you on.
Absolutely.
That was very enjoyable. So.
If you want to get a hold of us, you can reach us at filmcrickets 8099 at gmail.com, and we are on Twitter and Facebook, and also for those who are listening audio wise, we are now on YouTube. So if you want to check that out, that'd be cool. That's quite exciting, and it's like a totally new adventure for us, so we're excited about that.
And we have to put on clean shirts now, which is just out of control. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the detergent bill. So you guys got to start watching because all the ironing I have to do and all the anti-shine for the top of my head, it's really kind of getting into my bank account. But yes, see us on YouTube as well.
All right. Well, take care, everybody. Have a great week.
All right.
All right.
See you next week. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Crickets chirping about movies.